Are we on now? Can you hear me now? Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I'd like to point out that my dear, lovely wife is here with me today. That is Miss Robin. That is my better half. She's beautiful, she's bright, she's intelligent, she's all wise and all knowing. Oh, that's enough. I've learned a few things in life. It may have taken me a while, but anyway, I'm so pleased that she was able to join me today. And we have also to do our invocation today an old friend too, Ed Jones, who's from Pascagoula. He's a CPA extraordinaire. We go back a long ways to the point whenever he was the head of the Mississippi Society of CPAs. And he had Mary Ann Mobley at our annual convention. That was a good night, wasn't it, Ed? And if you'll notice, Ed has a very spiffy bow tie. He is a very colorful CPA, and he has done an outstanding job of all the years, and he is very much good with public service. And Ed, it's a pleasure and honor to have you today, and would ask you to come forward for our invocation.
Thank you, Sam. It's really wise of you to put your best foot forward, as in Robin here. I commend you for that wisdom. I was thinking as I drove up, maybe this peacock and pheasant tie would put me over the top in this competition that Sam and I constantly have to see who's going to be better dressed. But then I get here and see the tie Robin picked out for Sam, and I'm feeling kind of shot down again. I truly appreciate Sam's invitation to lead the invocation here today. Given my long friendship with Sam, and also my son Brandon Jones, special friendships with Cecil, also with Brandon, and with Ryan, I commented to Sam that I certainly feel like I'm among friends today. As a Mississippi CPA, I'm particularly thankful for the contributions to our profession by both Cecil and Sam, outstanding members and outstanding CPAs. A couple of things. I got very brief remarks here before I pray. I just want to say a couple of things. As recorded in Matthew 28, the Great Commission, Jesus' last words to his followers was the command to go into all the world and make disciples. Well, I have a strong conviction that America was birthed by God and sustained for 240 years because our country has done more to heed the Great Commission of Jesus Christ than any other nation on the face of the earth. We've got many shortcomings, many problems, but that's one thing we've gotten right, and I'm so thankful for that. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, you're the great God, and we worship you, we come to you, we voice our petitions as you ask us to do, and we just admit that you're the one who has all the wisdom, all the knowledge, and all the power. And so we submit to you. We ask you to fill us and make us useful instruments of yours. Father, we know that these commissioners are only as good, and their staff, of course, are only as good as the wisdom you give them. So we ask you to give them a double portion of your wisdom, help them to make good deliberations, good decisions that will bring benefit to the citizens of the state of Mississippi, and also glory and honor to you. And Lord, as you give us victories in our lives, may we be careful to give you all the praise and the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ed, and I might add that Ed is dressed very conservatively today.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you for being here today, and Ms. Robin, it's always good to see you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and my honor to help you. I will ask you to help welcome our newest Public Service Commissioner, recently elected beginning in January, Mr. Brent Bailey. I think most of you know Brent. Brent, where are you? Back in the back there. Congratulations to Brent.
Congratulations, Brent. Than're a regular face around here. I was going to say thank you for being here, but you've been here for many, many years. And congratulations on your win, and thank you for your service. All right, we will move straight into today's agenda. Item 1 is the consent docket, proposed docket for 2019 term of the commission. It's been published. It's available just inside the door. Are there any questions, additions, or deletions to the consent docket? Here none. Do we have a motion to approve it as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Britton. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? Here none. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 1 on energy, discussion and possible action regarding proposed order in docket 2012 UN 139, CenterPoint Energy Mississippi Gas, notice of CenterPoint Energy Resources, DBA CenterPoint Energy Mississippi Gas, filing routine changes in its rate regulation adjustment rider, and the initial filing of its weather normalization adjustment rider. Ms. Myron.
Thank you, Chairman. CenterPoint Energy filed its annual rate regulation adjustment rider and weather normalization adjustment rider evaluations on May 1st, presenting the company's verifiable historical data for the 12 months ended December 31st, 2018. The filing indicated an allowed return on equity of 9.264% and an earned return on equity of 7.26%, indicating a revenue adjustment increase of approximately $2 million is warranted. Staff reviewed the company's filing along with numerous data responses. Staff proposed several adjustments to the company's filed figures. On October 31st, the company and the staff entered into a joint stipulation that decreased rate base by approximately $195,000 for a capital portion of incentive compensation and a decrease in cash working capital. In addition to the reduction to rate base, the staff and the company agreed that O&M expenses should be reduced by approximately $661,000 for expense disallowances for employee expenses, executive incentive compensation, supplemental retirement benefits, board of directors fees, and certain advertising expenses. With the reductions in rate base and O&M expenses, the total revenue requirement is reduced by approximately $459,000, resulting in an increase in the incremental revenue requirement of approximately $1.6 million. The increased revenue requirement is mostly attributable to increased rate base driven by major capital projects, such as increased steel replacements, public improvement projects, city gate station replacements, and software replacements. The stipulated revenue requirement results in a monthly increase of 80 cents in an average residential customer's bill. Staff has reviewed the filing and supporting documentation and is satisfied that the results, as stipulated, represent a fair and reasonable revenue requirement. Accordingly, staff recommends approval of the order adopting the joint stipulation.
Thank you, Ms. Myrick. Any questions by the commissioners on item 1? Here none. Do we have a motion to approve item 1 as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Britton. Any discussion? Here none. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 2, discussion and possible action regarding the proposed order in docket 2012 UA 340, Atmos Energy Corporation, application of Atmos Energy Corporation for approval to change its existing statistical performance meter testing standard and for an exemption to rules 51.1301 and 51.105 of the rules and regulations governing public utility service. Ms. Meyer.
Thank you. In this filing, Atmos is requesting approval to defer sampling of newly installed meters for a period of 10 years from the date of installation. By order dated June 4, 2013, the Commission granted Atmos the authority to implement a statistical performance meter testing standard and also granted Atmos an exemption from certain rules and regulations governing public utility service related to meter testing and replacement. Under its statistical performance meter testing standard, the company has observed that meters in the 0 to 10-year age range, which are tested prior to shipment, have shown no tendency to be inaccurate. Removal and testing of these newly installed meters have shown to be an unnecessary expense and an inconvenience to customers. The company expects the trend toward a more accurate population of meters to continue. Therefore, the company is requesting to defer statistical sampling on newly installed meters for 10 years from the installation date. Staff's engineer reviewed the company's request along with data responses and historical statistical meter data. The data Atmos provided showed no significant meter failures in the first 10 years of operation. Therefore, staff believes that the company's request is reasonable. Staff recommends approval.
All right, before we get into that, I assume though with that waiver, if the commission receives a consumer complaint and wants that meter tested, nothing in that waiver interferes with that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I just asked that we amend the order to make that explicitly clear on it, because we do get those calls from time to time, and while I know the company's not seeking that, I think it'd just be good to have that clearly in there. So with that one amendment, does anybody have a problem with that amendment? I guess it'd be first thing. All right, do we have a motion then to approve item 2 with that one amendment?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Britton. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 3, discussion and possible action, proposed order 2013 UN 214, CenterPoint Energy. Notice of intent of CenterPoint Energy to establish a supplemental growth rider. Ms. Meyer.
On May 1st, CenterPoint filed its supplemental growth rider for the 12 months ending December 31st of 2018. The SGR is designed to encourage industrial development and job creation by providing an incentive for CenterPoint to extend gas service for industrial projects which are not otherwise feasible for the company to fund. CenterPoint may invest without project-specific commission approval up to $5 million annually. Also, CenterPoint may invest in excess of $5 million annually, but only with commission approval. For the 12 months ended December 31st, 2018, CenterPoint invested in no new supplemental growth projects. The total net investment included in the SGR, including prior years, is approximately $4.7 million, which results in a revenue requirement decrease of approximately $58,000. The rate impact of the proposed SGR is a decrease of 3 cents for residential customers' monthly bill. When combined with the increase for the company's RRA filing, an average residential customer should experience an increase of 77 cents per month. Staff has reviewed the filing along with the applicable tariff and found the filing to be in compliance with the tariff. The staff also reviewed all supporting calculations and found no errors. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. Any questions on item 3?
I have one.
Commissioner Brown.
Ms. Meyer, I want to make sure now, this is just basically a renewal of existing supplemental growth program. Is that correct?
That's correct.
There are no substantive changes in the program.
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a motion to approve item 3 as presented? Motion by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Britton. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 4, discussion and possible action in docket 2019 UA 119, Entergy Mississippi LLC, petition for a CPCN to continue making reliability improvements to modernize transmission infrastructure in Adams County. Ms. Meyer.
Thank you. On July 25th, Entergy filed a petition for a certificate of public convenience and necessity to make reliability improvements to its transmission infrastructure in Adams County. The company is seeking to rebuild a 5.5-mile section of the 11.4-mile long Natchez to Red Gum 115 kilovolt transmission line to achieve a 259 MVA through rating. The line will be rebuilt to 230 kV design specifications, but will initially be operated at 115 kV. The Natchez to Red Gum transmission line spans from the Natchez SES substation in Adams County to the Red Gum substation in Concordia Parish, Louisiana. Entergy Mississippi's 5.5-mile section of the transmission line spans from the Natchez SES substation to the midpoint of the transmission line's Mississippi River crossing. Entergy Louisiana's section extends from the midpoint of the transmission line's Mississippi River crossing to the Red Gum substation in Concordia Parish. The rebuild of Entergy Louisiana's section of the transmission line will be performed as a separate project funded by Entergy Louisiana. Entergy intends to build the proposed facilities in order to maintain compliance with NERC mandatory reliability standards. Transmission studies identify the potential for thermal overloads on the transmission line in the event that both the Grand Gulf Nuclear Station and the South Natchez Plantation 115 kV transmission line go out of service at the same time. The proposed facilities will satisfy the mandatory NERC standards. The proposed electrical facilities were submitted in the 2018 planning process in the MISO Transmission Expansion Plan. MISO planning personnel determined the proposed electric facilities provided the most effective alternative to remedy the identified limitations. In December of 2018, the MISO Board of Directors approved the proposed project. One EPC contractor has been chosen to perform the Louisiana and Mississippi sides of the project. Physical construction is scheduled to begin in March of 2020 for both Mississippi and Louisiana, and both sides of the project are scheduled to be placed in service in June of 2021. The total estimated cost of Entergy Mississippi's proposed facilities is approximately $27.6 million. Entergy Mississippi estimates that the revenue requirement associated with the proposed facilities would result in approximately a 29-cent rate impact on a typical residential customer's monthly bill. Staff has reviewed the filing, its supporting documentation, and Entergy's data responses. Interested parties were noticed, and there were no interveners. Entergy has requested a waiver filing a complete set of plans and specifications for the facilities proposed because such items are not yet complete. The staff recommends approval of the project and the temporary waiver of the company's plans and specifications, contingent upon the company filing the required information with staff once complete but before construction on the project begins.
Thank you, Mr. Myrick. Any questions on item 4? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve item 4 as presented? Motion by Commissioner Britton, have a second. Second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Telecommunications agenda item 1, discussion and possible action regarding proposed order in docket 2019 UA 123 Fusion LLC and Fusion Cloud Services, approval of joint application for transfer of control to Telecom Holdings for bankruptcy reorganization. Ms. Chandler.
Thank you, Chairman. This was filed on August 8, 2019, whereby transfer of control of Fusion Connect Incorporated, Fusion LLC, and Fusion Cloud Services LLC to Telecom Holdings LLC. Fusion LLC was authorized to provide inter-exchange service in docket 1999 UA 119 on May 5, 1999. Fusion Cloud was authorized to offer competitive local exchange and inter-exchange service in docket 1999 UA 967 on February 23, 2000. Both companies are subsidiaries of Fusion Connect. On June 3, 2019, each of the Fusion companies filed with the United States Bankruptcy Court a voluntary Chapter 11 filing. When the Fusion companies emerge from Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, Telecom Holdings will hold more than 50% of the common stock of the reorganized Fusion. Telecom Holdings has no other operations than to hold debt interest and ultimately controls common stock in Fusion Connect. This petition has been filed with the FCC in docket WC 19262. The proposed transaction appears to be in the public interest. The transaction will have no adverse impact on the current customers or of any of the Fusion companies. It will not involve a change in service provider and should be transparent to the customers. Staff recommends approval with the condition upon the FCC approval. The parties will notify the Commission of the consummation of the transaction, and if the FCC condition is not met, this order would be void.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler. Any questions on item 1? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve item 1 as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Britton. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 2, discussion and possible action, docket number 2019 UA 149, Lakeside Telephone Company and Sledge Telephone Company, approval of joint petition of transfer of control to Sledge Telephone. Ms. Chandler.
Thank you, Commissioner. Lakeside and Sledge Telephone Companies filed this on September 16, 2019. Both are rural local exchange companies, and both are commonly owned by Sunflower Enterprises. Lakeside serves customers in portions of Washington County and Issaquah County, while Sledge serves customers in Sunflower County. Both companies are eligible telecommunication carriers receiving modified legacy support from the Universal Service Fund High Cost Program. The officers for both companies are Robert Sledge, Director, President, and Lisa Sledge, Director, Secretary, Treasurer. On September 4, 2019, Sunflower Enterprises adopted a plan of merger whereby Lakeside will be merged into Sledge, with Sledge emerging as the surviving corporation in the effective January 1, 2020. Customers will be notified of the pending transaction in November and December. There will be no changes in services other than the name change for the Lakeside customers. The transaction will increase operational efficiencies and minimize costly redundancies. The two companies are in close geographic proximity. The company filed for approval with the FCC and docket WC 1990 to merge the two commonly owned entities in study areas, which was approved on October 28, 2019. Sledge will file a combined tariff before January 1st. Notice will be given to the Commission upon the consummation of the transaction. This petition is in order and staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler. Any questions on item 2? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve item 2 as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Britton. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Water and Sewer, item 1, docket 2018 UA 78, City of Oxford. Order approving sale and transfer of portion of campgrounds CPCN to City of Oxford. Mr. McCoo.
Commissioners, this is a joint filing by the City of Oxford and Campground Water Association to transfer a portion of campground certificated area to Oxford. The area to be transferred is a 25-acre tract that is located within 1 mile of Oxford. Campground has no facilities or customers in the area, and Oxford can provide service to future customers at a lower cost. USDA has approved the sale. There are no other interested parties to be noticed. The filing is complete and staff recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. McCoo. I move we approve item 1. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Britton. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Move now to the administrative agenda. Item 1 is the discussion on the minutes for the October 2019 term of the commission. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes for October as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Britton, second by Commissioner Brown. No discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 2, discussion and possible action regarding resolution recognizing and commending Mississippi utility workers for their service to the state and asking the governor and legislature to designate the month of April as Utility Worker Appreciation Month. I had asked that this item be put on the agenda. Last year, the legislature had acknowledged the month of April as a month in which to highlight and appreciate the work of our utility workers. This resolution, and that was in the wake of the tragic death of one of our electric cooperative linemen in Prentiss County, and it's not been a permanent recognition. And in many other states in the country, the month of April is recognized as a time for commissions and for the state to recognize the work and the sacrifice of our utility workers. This resolution would have the commission recognize that in April and ask the legislature to simply do the same, which they already did last year. Are there any questions on the resolution? Hearing none, we have a motion to approve that resolution as presented. Motion by Commissioner Britton. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Brown. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 3, discussion and possible action regarding the proposed order in docket 2019 UN 114, Town of Carrollton. Order referring that matter to me, Mr. Farmer.
As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that's just simply an order referring that to you for hearing and order.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve item 3 as presented? Motion by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Britton. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 4, Town of Golden, 2019 UN 42, order denying exceptions and adopting the recommended order. Mr. Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was a matter that had been referred to a hearing examiner, which was you, and the hearing took place. Proposed order was filed. Exceptions were filed to the order, which brings it to a vote of the full commission. The nature of the exceptions had to do with the payment on interest on deposits, and the exceptions seek to avoid having to pay that interest on deposits. So the question now is whether to affirm the order of the hearing examiner, which does require that, or whether to take it up for a different vote.
All right, thank you. The bottom line is Town of Golden don't want to do what everybody else has to do, and that's pay the interest on the deposit. So I move we approve item 4. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 5, discussion and possible action, 2002 UA 74 Access Point, request by Access Point for cancellation of its CPCN. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. In front of you is an order canceling the certificate of public convenience and necessity for this telecommunications carrier. On March the 20th, 2002, the Commission granted Access Point its CPCN in this docket, authorizing Access Point to provide facilities-based and resold exchange telecommunications services within the state of Mississippi. Access Point filed a request for cancellation and then a supplemental request for cancellation. There's not been any interveners in this docket. Access Point doesn't have any customers in Mississippi and has ceased operations for offering telecommunications services in Mississippi. On January 1, 2019, GC Pivotal LLC began providing telecommunications services to Access Point customers under the same terms, rates, and conditions as the service previously provided. The customers were provided notice of the change in the carrier, and at this point, the cancellation is really just an administrative step. So it's in the best interest of the public for us to do this.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Any questions on item 5? None. We have a motion to approve item 5. Motion by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Britton. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 6, discussion and possible action in docket 2009 UA, Mattel Cloud Services, and docket number 2002 UA 662, request for cancellation of CPCN. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is the same type of order, it's an order canceling their certificate. It comes at their request. In docket number 2002 UA 662, the Commission granted Mitel, which was formerly Intertel Net Solutions, Inc., its CPCN, authorizing Mitel to operate as a reseller of inter-exchange telecommunications services within the state of Mississippi. In docket number 2009 UA 28, the Commission granted Mitel, formerly Mitel Net Solutions, Inc., its CPCN, authorizing Mitel to operate as a reseller of local switch telecommunications services within the state of Mississippi. There hasn't been any interveners in this docket. There are no customers whose services are being impacted by this cancellation. Mitel serves its customers through voice over IP and a variety of over-the-top, nomadic, interconnected services, as well as private business communications and collaborative solutions. Mitel is no longer providing regulated telecommunications services in the state of Mississippi. Mitel has advised that its services are sold on a non-tariff basis pursuant to special contracts with business customers only and are not sold to any residential customers. Mitel is no longer rendering the service granted in the CPCN, so the cancellation of the CPCNs held by Mitel is in the best interest of the public.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions on item 6? Hearing none, we have a motion to approve item 6 as presented. Motion by Commissioner Brown, we have a second by Commissioner Britton. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 7, same type of matter, 2001 UA 501, reduced rate long distance LLC. Ms. Taylor.
Yes, again, this is an order canceling the certificate of public convenience and necessity. The Commission in this docket granted reduced rate, its CPCN, on September 19, 2001 to operate as a reseller of long-distance inter-exchange telecommunications services within the state of Mississippi. They filed an informal application requesting that the CPCN be canceled. There's not been any interveners in this docket. The company is no longer providing telecommunications services in the state of Mississippi. Therefore, it's in the best interest for us to cancel this certificate.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have a motion to approve item 7 as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Britton. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Addition to the agenda, unless there's objection, would be to item 8, docket 2018 UA 205, Entergy Mississippi's request for a pre-hearing conference on their formulated rate plan. This proposal is to refer that matter to Mr. Farmer. Do you?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Chairman. It's referring it to me as hearing examiner for the limited purpose of conducting the pre-hearing conference they requested under the statute.
Okay. Do you have any questions for Mr. Farmer on item 8? All right. Do we have a motion to approve item 8 as presented? Motion by Commissioner Britton, second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Before we have one thing before we break for about 2 minutes to get into our hearing, Mr. Jones has like to make a recognition at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is this working?
Yes, sir.
Good. Today is Donna Chandler's last meeting as a member of the Public Utilities staff, and I wanted to recognize her for her service. Donna began her career in telecommunications in 1985, working for Colonial Telephone Company in Bay Springs. She joined the staff in December 2009 as an advanced accountant and was promoted to Section Director of Telecommunications in 2011. She has served with distinction on the NARUC Staff Subcommittee on Telecommunications since August of 2011. Based on her work and contributions on this subcommittee, she was asked to serve as a member of the Universal Service Fund Federal and State Joint Board, a very prestigious appointment. It's been an honor to serve with her on the staff, and the entire staff joins me in wishing her a long and satisfying retirement. And I'd like y'all to join me, please, in showing Donna our appreciation for her service. Thank you.
Commissioner Brown.
Well, I just want to say that I have seldom worked with anybody who is more knowledgeable and hardworking in a particular area, very highly technical area like Donna Chandler. She has been a delight to work with and incredibly helpful to me and my staff for the last 4 years. And thank you, Donna, for all your great work.
And I certainly would add to that. It did not take me long on my first meeting when I asked questions, and she was very patient. And it did not take me long to understand the full depth of her knowledge. So thank you very much.
Donna, I just want to say, I hope you know of how much affection and respect that I have for you and the work that you've done and the fact that you've been such a leader and a tireless advocate for the folks in rural Mississippi who have been left out, shut out, forgot about, and in trying to steer an industry that too many times forgets and doesn't care about those people into a way in which they had to recognize that. You have been a tireless fighter for these people in every way in which this goofy commissioner without the IQ of half of yours could know what to do, know the rules, know the industry, know the standards, know the fights, and I personally appreciate that. The folks out there who are in the most remote areas of our state and are literally disconnected from the outside world owe you a great debt of gratitude for your work your whole time here, but particularly your work since 2011, since you've headed up this division. I've been in public life now for 18 years, whether that's good or bad. A lot of people say it's bad. For 18 years, and I can say clearly that you're one of the people that so many times government and government employees get designated as just bureaucrats, and that's a pejorative by many people who are elected. Those who want to get in office call the very people that they go to work with a pejorative. But you have been someone that I've called in the middle of the night and early in the morning and on your way to the doctor's office, and you've never not taken that call. And you have been just a complete, perfect example of what a public servant is and what putting your heart and soul in a job means. And by that, you have particularly had an impact on the lives of families and people and children for the better in this state. And I thank you for that. And I think we all are going to miss you tremendously, but have no fear. If you change your cell phone number, we'll issue some order to you that you can't do that. So thank you for all you've done.
Thank you so much.
I don't see a real need to set up for this next hearing because this is we're not actually going to, for the next hearing, the center point one, we will. So we will move now into 2018 AD 64, Mississippi Public Service Commission order establishing docket to investigate the development and implementation of integrated resource planning rule. I've got a list of the intervenors here. If they would like to come speak, we're going to give you a chance at the microphone to have a few minutes to make your comments. Comments have been filed since Monday. I would ask the record to note that since Monday, the proposed rule has been issued in the docket for public consumption. Also, it has been posted on the website. So, Mr. Farmer, is there anything you'd like to add before I go through the intervenors?
That covers it, Mr. Chairman. As far as a procedural matter, this is the adoption of the proposed IRP rule, integrated resource planning rule that has been under consideration and discussion and negotiations between the staff and the commission and all of the party interveners. since 2018, and this is the fruition of that hard work.
Thank you. I just want to say before we get to the comment period to Ms. Dixon, thank you so much for the work that you've put into this. I know that trying to work through the minutia and all that goes on in these type of endeavors is tough, and you have done a very good job in getting us to where we are today, and I really want to publicly thank you for the work you've done. It's not been in vain. All right, so we will move now to the public comment period. Are there any intervenors in this case that would like to come and make comments for the record? Okay. Any public comments for the record? All right, Mr. Alexander.
You mind if I turn this around?
It'd be fine. If you would, give your name for the record.
Good morning, Tom Alexander. I represent AT&T here in Mississippi, and I'll give you my business card with my address and all that other information. Commissioners, thank you very much. AT&T filed comments, both original and reply comments. Our comments, as you've read them, I'm sure, primarily focused on paragraph 4 in part 5 of section 107, which had addressed broadband services and cost subsidies for those services. Earlier this week, as you just mentioned, on Monday, the Commission posted on its website a revised version of that language, and it contains significant changes. Those changes in paragraph 4 were dramatic, and we appreciate the Commission making those changes. Paragraph 4 now focuses on fiber optic facilities rather than broadband services. It appears to focus on public utilities deploying fiber optic facilities to modernize and improve public utility service rather than to provide broadband service. It no longer includes the option to make speculative investments in unregulated, unaffiliated companies that provide broadband service. AT&T, again, congratulates the Commission and its lawyers for making revisions to this rule. They're very significant because it has to do with the authority and jurisdiction of the Commission. As we've pointed out several times, that is not within the statutory realm. Broadband services in the Commission's authority. However, having acknowledged the dramatic changes and improvements in the rule, there are still a few changes that need to be discussed. The rule does not seem to specify its statutory authority for imposing this rule. It still seems to rely on legislative policy statements in subsection 1 of section 77-3-2 of the Mississippi Code. Again, as we pointed out in our comments, that does not constitute substantive authority for the Commission to adopt this rule. So in the end, that means the Commission still lacks statutory authority to take the action it's taking. More to the point, it's also unclear what purpose the 4th paragraph now serves, and even if it's still needed. If rate-regulated utilities will use fiber optic investments to improve or modernize their utility services, they could just seek to recover those costs through the usual rate-making proceedings that the Commission has. There's no need to have a separate rule to pre-authorize those expenditures for a particular type of service by utility. Secondly, it's also unclear how the fiber optic investments that are in the 4th paragraph differ from the enhanced grid investments in the 3rd paragraph. That's allowed, and they specifically address, it appears to be fiber to the home. In the 3rd paragraph, utilities are allowed to make investments of up to $25 million per year in the enhanced grid investment. In the 4th paragraph, it allows up to $10 million per year in fiber optics infrastructure. Does that mean utilities can make $35 million in pre-authorized investments? Even if the 4th paragraph is adopted, it should still be clarified, modified in order to remove ambiguity. There is still a risk that they can use 4th paragraph to provide broadband services, they being the utilities with captive ratepayers. Commission should expressly require that fiber optic investments specified in this rule as being pre-authorized must be made for and used for public utility service and not broadband service. Finally, the 2nd and 3rd paragraphs in the proposed rule still refer either expressly as in paragraph 2 or implicitly as in paragraph 3, broadband, and it might be read as treating investment in broadband service as a permissible goal of the PSC. Again, the Commission knows it doesn't have authority over broadband, statutory authority. We would ask that the Commission revise that language for the same reason we're talking about in the 4th paragraph to focus on public utility service, not broadband. if the commission will allow me, I have a handout that makes these rules. Bring it up to the floor.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask that our exhibit, this is simply red line of 29 dot 107, subpart 5, and it's paragraphs 2, 3, and 4. And it shows changes that AT&T has proposed.
All right.
That mark is here in exhibit.
We'll put that in. Thank you, Mr. Alexander. All right, does anyone else like to speak? Mr. Bailey?
Mr. Chairman, this shows the changes that I suggested and spoke about earlier, and I have that admitted into the record.
All right, thank you. We'll mark it as Exhibit 1.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. You're on camera.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
And I do want to second everything that you said about the work you put into this. No doubt this is a, a
Oh,
big step.
Brent Bailey.
Oh, do I need to get,
That's fine.
I'm sorry. Brent Bailey, 25 by 25, 107 Cedar Ridge Drive, Canton, Mississippi, 39046. All right. No doubt, this is a big step for the commission in long-term planning and transparency in how decisions are made at the Public Service Commission and regarding particularly how stakeholders can be involved. And I appreciate everything you've done, the work we've been through most of 2018 and through all of 2019 and getting these comments in and really being heard and incorporating these. There's a lot of things we've discussed and through our comments to ensure transparency and public participation. We've voiced our concerns of some things we have, and particularly the work we've been engaged in since January 2010 to develop and implement a very strong energy efficiency set of guidelines, rules, programs, portfolios, and that was something we always had concerns with about the Rule 29 rewrite and what it entailed, and hopefully, for reasons, as we all know, I haven't had time to really dig into these things since Monday.
No, seriously?
So I guess with that, and I know I'm just one individual with request here, but I was going to humbly ask that the commission could potentially delay a final decision for a couple days, maybe 10 days, to allow stakeholders to have a deeper dive into this rewrite, this update of the latest version of Rule 29. To determine, has our concerns and recommendations been adequately reflected in, stakeholder participation, the role of energy efficiency, the planning process that goes in. And I've seen just the few minutes I had to look at it, I see there is now a very established set of criteria that allows for stakeholder participation and utility consideration of requests and things along those lines, such as technical conference. So I appreciate those components being included in there. But just to kind of a re-up on some of the things that we've put out there. That's just a simple request we may have, not to create any additional work for the commission, any additional special meetings or anything along those lines, but just an opportunity for stakeholders, consumers, and those participating and other interveners to have a little time to take up.
What did you just say about special meetings?
Don't want to create any special meetings or any additional steps for the PSC, but just an opportunity for the stakeholders and interveners to have a additional look at something, as you said, that hit the docket on Monday.
Gotcha. Let me ask this question, Mr. Bailey. So we would have to have a special meeting to adopt,
Right.
to take a vote. So how, what are y'all saying, just an additional comment period to file comments in there after,
or at least opportunity to review these. I know that, I think the goal and objective was to get these adopted today, I assume. That's just a request I asked. That's up
Sure.
to you to
Yeah.
accept or deny. But it was something I was just gonna.
all right. Mr. Britton, yeah, go ahead. No, that's fine.
Anyway.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Bailey, are you asking for an additional comment period? If you have more time to review, are you asking for a period of time within which you can submit additional comments or for an additional hearing, or what are you asking
Certainly.
for?
Well, I know that's what the hearing component today is about, but just, certainly a little more time rather than 48 hours to take a dive into something that we've worked,
Yeah,
almost
I'm
2
not, I'm
years
not,
on.
I know you've been working on it a long time and understand that. I'm trying to understand though, if you just ask for additional time before we vote, it seems to me have to be asking for additional time within which you could submit comments. Otherwise, we wouldn't know what conclusions you reach by just looking at it additional time. So are you asking for that?
I guess so then.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not sure what the legal parameters or requirements are and what that.
Well, the
may-
attorneys can guide us on that. I'm just trying to make sure that if you want more additional time, we wouldn't have that information unless there's some way you can get those comments to us. So,
So, there's an additional 10 days. Is that inappropriate, or is that beyond scope, or does that burden the commission in any way, shape, or form?
Mr. Farmer, let me ask you, I mean, I guess I want to try to accommodate and see what we can work out. I guess my question is, are we opening back up the entire comment period on this? I mean, from the Administrative Procedures Act, how are we?
The Administrative Procedures Act, not necessarily implicated in this. It would be, the next step in this would be for the commission to adopt the rule if it chooses to adopt this rule, and then provide that to the Secretary of State's office, and then that starts another implementation waiting period before the rule can take effect. So if the commission wanted to grant additional time for comments just before the commission, it could do so and could pick whatever time that it wanted to do that. But the timing of the effectiveness of the rule has to do with when it's
That's not what
filed
I'm
with the
talking
Secretary of
about.
State.
What I'm asking is if we're able to work out, I guess I'm kind of
Commissioner, I
going.
can answer
I
this
guess my
question.
question is, does the revisions, and like I said, I hadn't had time to really look at them since they came out on Monday, does it represent a significant deviation from prior versions of this? And that's what I'd like to have the opportunity to.
A couple of things. For one thing, I can, if it helps Mr. Bailey, I can provide a summary of what the changes were for the record and for him, and we can see if that helps. But to
Yeah,
your
a red line
question,
comparison from last version to this version would certainly be helpful for, interveners such as myself.
and that would be part of what would be submitted to the Secretary of State. But for purposes of your question regarding the Administrative Procedures Act, one hearing is being conducted. If the stakeholders collectively requested another hearing, the commission would be inclined to conduct another hearing. However, if the changes, and if the comments submitted within 10 days, if Mr. Bailey is requesting 10 days for comments, if comments were submitted and subsequent changes to this rule were made by the commission and they grew organically from those comments, a hearing would not be required just by the submission of additional comments. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
If
but
he
at some point
requested
you got to
another hearing.
vote.
Well, correct. I mean, but that's a separate issue than the Administrative Procedures Act. But if it's helpful to commissioners or to Mr. Bailey or to other stakeholders who are present, I'm happy to give a rundown on the changes that were made.
I guess my concern is that we've gone through a process. I have no problem with trying to come up with a way to work with everybody. Go ahead, Commissioner Brett.
Well, what would be the problem of just postponing this vote till our next meeting, December the 11th or whatever it is, which would give him time?
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. I mean, here's where we've got, if on the calendar, we've got, to go to 10 days is gonna put us over into the week of Thanksgiving, or the week before. And that, I don't have a problem with doing that I really don't know how to deal with that request. I mean, to be honest with you, and to try to keep it fair to everybody and to do what we're doing, Commissioner Brown.
I don't have a problem waiting until December the 11th either, if that's
That's
the
fine.
best thing to do. But the question, I guess, is the chairman has said, where does that put us in terms of final adoption of the rule? Let's assume that Mr. Bailey has no problem with the way it's been rewritten and that AT&T has already submitted comments. If we decided today to postpone to December the 11th, where does that put us in terms of actually voting on a final rule?
That would be done in December on the final rule.
Okay,
In
now-
terms of the timeline, after the commission votes, we would finalize the order and publish the final rule with the Secretary of State.
Nothing says after, if we grant an additional 10 days for review of what was put out there, as Mr. Bailey's requested, and I would instruct the staff to reach out to try to, just provide, as he said, a red line document as best as we can. We've heard Mr. Alexander's comments and objections. But besides that, to try to reach out in a way in which provides that, since it did go out on Monday, I mean, nothing prohibits us from calling a special meeting if it's all worked out and go ahead and getting that moving. If that's to the point, or if there's disagreement, at some point you got to vote on it. I don't have, is there any problem with the commission doing it that way? All right, I move then that we grant additional 10-day period and instruct the staff to work with the intervenors, and acknowledging AT&T has already made their arguments here today, but I assume they'll be a part of that. And the commission then, after that period, can call a special meeting or whatever they need to do. All right, that's my motion. We have a second. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Utley. Come on up here and put your name on the record. Put your name on the record.
Crystal Utley Sepoy, Special Assistant Attorney General for the state of Mississippi, 550 High Street. I agree with what he's requested and grateful for y'all considering that. And in addition, it would be helpful to hear from Ms. Dixon and staff just what they see happening with energy efficiency and with the prior rule and how they see that reconciled with the current rule. It would also be helpful to understand any enforcement mechanism that is in here and what ability the commission has to respond to what's submitted to you in the integrated resource planning process.
What do you mean by enforcement?
Well, what can the commission do under this language in response to the information you receive? If you feel that someone is not following, not following the process, or they're making energy decisions, ignoring, say, offers that were made, or ignoring good resources, what ability does the commission have under this rule to respond?
Are you saying that you think that this somehow dilutes the commission's authority? I mean, we would already have authority over that, wouldn't we?
No, sir, I don't mean to interrupt you. I see that it says this doesn't impact the prudence process. I guess I'm asking, does this provide the commission any additional step, any additional mechanism to intervene into the utilities integrated resource planning? Like, what can you do once you get this information?
Okay, Commissioner Brown.
Well, Ms. Utley, we're talking about granting an additional 10 days for comments. So would that not resolve your problem if you were able to submit comments or submit questions or sit down and talk with Ms. Dixon? I mean, you got an additional 10 days. Is that not sufficient for you to do what you're asking?
Yes, yes.
I don't know that we can do that here.
Right, and maybe, I mean, as an intervener, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to call Ms. Dixon. It may be useful for all the interveners maybe to have a conference call.
But to be clear, this is not a contested matter. This is
That's
the
right.
commission acting in a
Rulemakings
legislative
are
role.
legislative in nature.
I just have some questions,
Sure.
I guess, and I raised them in my comments, and it would be helpful to.
Okay, well, we're gonna give everybody 10 days. We've got that, we'll work that out. Thank you very much. All right, my motion is to grant 10 days, and if the commission, and for the staff to work with the intervenors. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to say on this? Okay. We duly noted AT&T's objection. It's marked as Exhibit 1, what they've written. All right, that's my motion. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Item 2019 UN 130, CenterPoint Energy. Notice of CenterPoint, DBA CenterPoint Mississippi Gas filing a change in estimated useful lives of system corporate assets. How long is it going to take y'all to set up? But I would ask, back on this past docket, please, to our staff, do what we can to get the red line documents as quick as we can and explain that. I mean, I do agree with the fact we should have we should have that degree of transparency, and I have absolutely no comment with that. I do think that some comments that were made today regarding this are misinterpretation or have not been read correctly or read within innuendo that are not intended. So with that, we'd ask the staff if they would to work with Mr. Bailey and with the gentleman, the gentlelady from the Attorney General's office, Ms. Sequoia, to work on that. Okay? All right, Mr. Halford, go ahead.
I'm Jim Halford. I'm with the Brunini Law Firm, Post Office Drawer 119, Jackson, Mississippi, representing CenterPoint Energy. Good morning, Commissioners. Just some brief background on this filing. On August 23, 2019, CenterPoint filed its notice of filing pursuant to Section 77-331 of the Mississippi Code, seeking the Commission's approval of a depreciation study that changes the estimated useful lives of CenterPoint's corporate assets as of January 1, 2018. This study covers the company's corporate assets, which are used to provide public utility services in Mississippi and in Texas and in Louisiana. This change has no effect on customer rates under our current RRA formula rate plan filing. There are no interveners, and Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to introduce the file as a confidential exhibit in this hearing.
All right, thank you. We'll mark that as Exhibit 1. You
And
finished?
For any questions.
All right, Mr. Farmer?
No questions for Mr. Holford.
Okay, Mr. Campbell?
No questions, Mr.
All
Chairman.
right. Thank you, Mr. Halford. Do we have a motion to approve the proposed order in this docket approving 2019 UN 130? All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Britton. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Is any other business coming before the commission? Do we understand what we're doing in this IRP situation? Okay? I'm asking the staff that mainly. Okay, we're in good shape? All right, thank you. We stand adjourned.